Hi there, friend. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're listening while sipping something warm, lying in bed, or walking beneath the trees, this story is for you. Today's tale might have a bit of a twist, but I promise it's gentle, wholesome, and ends with a smile. It's about how I once got scammed, and how that little mistake led to something surprisingly wonderful. It all started in late autumn, just as the leaves were beginning to fall in our quiet little town. My cottage sits on the edge of a forest, where the trees turn golden and crimson, and squirrels scurry through dry leaves like they're late for something important. The days were getting shorter, and every evening, I'd light candles and brew spiced tea, letting the peacefulness settle in like an old friend. Then one morning, while checking the mail, I found a letter that stood out from the usual pile of soft paper and flyers. The envelope was cream-colored, with an old-fashioned wax seal pressed into the back. It smelled faintly of vanilla and cedar. On the front, in looping script, was my name. No return address. Curious, I brought it inside, placed it gently on the kitchen table, and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note that read, "Congratulations. You have been selected for the Maplewood Artisans Discovery Club. As a new resident, you've been chosen to receive a surprise mystery gift from one of our local artists. No payment required. Just send back the enclosed form with your name and address. Your special item will arrive soon." Now, normally, I'm careful with things like this, but everything about the letter felt so cozy. The paper was thick and soft to the touch, and the handwriting felt personal. I thought, what a charming little town tradition. What could possibly go wrong? So I filled out the form, sealed it in the return envelope, and walked it down to the village postbox beside the bakery. The sky was overcast, and the scent of cinnamon rolls drifted through the air. I smiled the whole way back to the cottage, half daydreaming about what the mystery item might be. A painting? A handmade candle? A poem, maybe? The next few days passed quietly. I tidied the garden, baked a few pumpkin muffins, and took long walks along the river path. I told myself not to expect anything. Maybe it was just a kind-hearted local, trying to spread joy. But still, every morning, I checked the mailbox. And then, one chilly Friday morning, it arrived. A small cardboard box, tied with twine, and stamped with a delicate little wax seal. My heart fluttered as I brought it inside. I set it down, made a cup of tea, and unwrapped it slowly, savoring the moment. Inside was, well, something very odd. A tiny wooden spoon, a piece of old cloth, and a folded card that read, "Magic in the Ordinary." That was it. No signature, no instructions, just those strange little items. I stared at it, blinking. My tea went cold. Had I just fallen for a scam? For a few days, the little box just sat on my counter. I'd glance at it while I watered my plants or stirred a pot of soup, wondering why someone would go through the trouble of making a fake letter only to send such a harmless little gift. The spoon was smooth and carved by hand. The cloth was soft linen, frayed at the edges, and smelled faintly of lavender. There was something about it I couldn't let go. So I did what anyone in a small town might do. I asked around. First, I walked to the village bakery. Mrs. Tomlin, the baker, always had her ear to the ground and a story to tell. She handed me a warm scone and listened patiently as I explained the letter and showed her the wooden spoon. She squinted, then chuckled. "That looks like something from Maribel's shop." "Who's Maribel?" I asked. "She runs the Lavender Nook, just off Buttercup Lane," she said, pointing down the cobbled street. "Not everyone finds it, though. It's tucked between two buildings and doesn't have a sign. You sort of stumble upon it when you're meant to." Well, that was all the encouragement I needed. That afternoon, I walked down Buttercup Lane. It was quiet, the kind of peaceful only a small town can offer. Golden leaves rustling in the breeze, cats lounging on windowsills, the distant hum of someone playing a violin through an open window. I nearly passed it, but there it was, just a little gate between two stone buildings, overgrown with ivy. I stepped through. The Lavender Nook wasn't really a shop, it was more like a garden that spilled indoors. Dried flowers hung from beams, jars of herbs lined wooden shelves, and the air smelled of old books and honey. Behind the counter stood a woman with silver hair tied in a braid, wearing a pale green apron. She looked up as if she'd been expecting me. "Ah," she said softly. "You opened the box." I blinked. "So, it was you?" She nodded. "I send out one each season, just to see who's still curious. Not everyone replies." I placed the spoon and cloth on the counter. "I thought maybe I'd been tricked." Maribel smiled, a warm, patient kind of smile. "You weren't tricked. You were invited." She explained that the spoon was carved from the branch of a tree that had fallen during a spring storm, and the cloth was from her grandmother's sewing basket. "Small things," she said, "but filled with stories. People move too fast these days. Sometimes they forget to look closely." We talked for a long time that afternoon. She showed me how to brew tea with dried marigold petals and told me how every item in her shop had a quiet story behind it. I left the lavender nook with a full heart and a small satchel of herbs tied with a ribbon. The little spoon sat comfortably in my pocket. I wasn't scammed after all. I had just been nudged gently into something slower, kinder, and a little magical. After that visit to the lavender nook, I started to notice things differently. Each morning, I made my tea a little slower. I listened more closely to the birds in the trees. I took time to sit by my garden gate with a book, letting the wind turn the pages if it wanted to. I even used that little wooden spoon in my sugar jar, just for the quiet joy of it. And I started visiting Maribel. Not every day, not even every week, but now and then, when the sun was gentle and I had no errands to run, I'd walk down Buttercup Lane and duck into the hidden gate. Sometimes we'd sit and talk. Sometimes we'd just arrange dried herbs in glass jars, humming softly to ourselves. She had that way about her, like time moved slower when you were near her. Then, one sunny spring morning, I woke to find something tucked just beneath my garden gate. It was another box smaller than the first. No note this time, just a tiny pressed flower tied to the top. Inside, there was a tiny vial of honey, a folded paper star, and a photo, an old one. It showed a group of women in a sunny garden, all wearing aprons, smiling around a wooden table. And there, right in the middle, was a much younger Maribel, holding what looked like that very same spoon. I turned the photo over. On the back, in soft fading ink, it read, "Magic lives in the quiet things we share." I carried the photo to the lavender nook that afternoon. Maribel was in the garden, planting chamomile. When I showed it to her, she laughed softly and brushed a bit of soil from her sleeve. "That was the first time I made a gift box," she said. "I was just a girl, and we were trying to spread kindness during a hard spring. That spoon was from my father's workbench. It's one of the last things he carved." I looked at the little spoon in my hand, feeling the weight of it differently now. It wasn't just a piece of wood, it was a memory, a kindness, a thread that had connected us across years. "You've given me more than a gift," I said quietly. "You've given me a story, a friend." Maribel smiled and handed me a small pot of blooming lavender. "Then you've understood the heart of it." We sat together for a long time that day, beneath the climbing roses, sipping mint tea and watching bees hum lazily between blossoms. The world felt slower, softer, and somehow more whole. And that's the thing about life's little surprises. Sometimes they arrive looking like a mistake, or even a scam. But if we meet them with patience and an open heart, they just might lead us to something beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this cozy little story brought some peace and warmth to your day. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back soon for more gentle, heartwarming tales. Until then, take your time, notice the little things, and maybe carve a spoon of your own. Hee